Hello there, everyone. If you're watching this video, then you are part of the TTOR Army, an army that is building itself up one subscriber at a time. And as you can see from the thumbnail and the title of today's video, today we're going to be dealing with an atheist user on Twitter who claimed that Christianity has nothing to do with the foundations of the United States of America's forming back in the 1700s. Of course, if you're a student of history, you know this is absolutely absurd, but I figured I'd respond in video format to this guy and give you guys a little history lesson in response to what this guy had to say. So how did this whole thing even come up? Well, what happened recently, as you can see here on Twitter, also known as X, the atheist content creator Shannon Q, who now goes by the handle Woke Drunk Girl, she responded to a Twitter post which reposted Donald Trump's recent promotion of the God Bless the USA Bible over on his Truth Social account. And her response to that post, to Donald Trump's video promoting this particular Bible, was to quote Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 2. So I responded to Shannon Q by saying, there is something oddly satisfying about watching a liberal atheist like Shannon Q get triggered by evil orange man promoting a Bible that also contains the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance in it. Oh, and by the way, guys, I actually purchased one of those Bibles, and I should be getting it in 4 to 6 weeks. So, thanks, Shannon Q, for the free advertising. Now, some guy named Skinny Jacks, or as he calls himself, Marco, with his rainbow flag and other emojis that he's got in his name here on X, said, in response to me, that is the most Christo-fascist BS ever. To which I responded, someone clearly doesn't like the idea of Christians knowing their Bible and their constitutional rights at the same time, LOLs. To which Marco said in response, you absolutely can have both. What you can't do, what we will not allow you to do, is to base our rights or lack thereof on your book. You keep that censored to yourself in your church. Religion doesn't belong in government. To which I said, unfortunately for you, Christianity and the Bible are at the very foundation of the founding of the USA. Learn U.S. history. To which he responded, this is not a theocracy as much as you pleasure yourself fantasizing that it is. It isn't. Over 40 million Americans have left the church in the last 25 years. People are waking up. To which I responded, no, I'm not an advocate of a theocracy. I'm an advocate of states choosing to make being a Christian a requirement to hold public office in their state. A real thing that happened in the late 1700s with the original constitutions of some states. To which Marco responded, oh yes, the good old 1700s and slavery. Ugh. A form of government led by religious leaders in the name of a deity is indeed a theocracy. SCOTUS ruled over 60 years ago, Torcase v. Watkins, that religious tests for state office indeed violated the First Amendment of the Constitution. Marco then said, funny, the only time religion is mentioned in the Constitution is on A1 when it declares freedom from religion. The word God or Christian doesn't appear on it at all. I don't feel like typing, so just read this. As if I don't know what the First Amendment says. But his other post was interesting. I don't know what his source is, but it says, the answer is no. Like others have mentioned, religion isn't really referenced in America's Constitution. The religious right might maintain that the intent was there, but any notion of the U.S. being founded on Christianity is quickly washed away by looking at one of the first foreign treaties the U.S. signed and ratified, the 1796 Treaty of Tripoli. Article 11 of that treaty. as the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character or enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslims, and as the said states never entered into any war or active hostility against the Mahometan nation, it declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries. That treaty was signed by President John Adams and was read in full on the Senate floor and was unanimously recommended for ratification by the Senate. Surely, if the U.S. government was founded on Christianity, you'd expect the early members of said government to do something other than unanimously approve of a treaty that includes the statement that is not founded in Christianity. Well, the good news for you, Marco, is that I'm going to be quoting our first 3 presidents as well as other church fathers who made it crystal clear that this country was founded on Christian principles, this country being the United States of America, and that to reject those principles will ultimately lead to the destruction of our country. And they said these things before the Treaty of Tripoli or around the same time. So let's get into the lesson here. Now, first off, he keeps claiming that I want a theocracy and I want to bring slavery back and all this stupid stuff. No, slavery is wrong, and it's the Bible that actually laid the foundation for the abolition of slavery, especially if you read Paul's letter to Philemon. As for the claim that I advocate for a theocracy, let's see what a theocracy is. According to Wikipedia, a theocracy is a form of government in which one or more deities are recognized as supreme ruling authorities, giving divine guidance to human intermediaries who manage the government's daily affairs. Or, as the dictionary from Oxford defines it, theocracy is a system of government in which priests rule in the name of God or a god. And this is simply not what the United States of America was ever founded as at any point. And it's not something that Christians have ever advocated for. You see, this country, the United States of America, was founded in rejection of the Church of England, because the Church of England had fused with the government, and the government and the Church of England had become essentially the same thing, and that's literally what our founding fathers were running from and rejecting and went to war over, was fighting against that very system. What they instead tried to create with the United States of America is a system of government where Christians and religious people who honored the Christian religion's rules would have their voices heard, and they'd have a representative government to rule over them. Now, as for the claim that our founding fathers and first 3 presidents supported the idea that rejection of Christianity would lead to the destruction of our country, well, let's get into the evidence for that. I have right here on screen an article on Yale Law School's website titled Washington's Farewell Address 1796. So this was a farewell address given by George Washington, our first president, in the same year that the Treaty of Tripoli was signed. And when you scroll down into this farewell address that George Washington made, you read the following. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and to cherish them. A volume could not trace all their connections with private and public felicity. In other words, according to George Washington, religion and morality are the indispensable supports of the United States of America, and if we reject religion and the morality that comes with it, this would lead to our destruction. You would see a major decrease in morality. As a matter of fact, you'd see a huge increase in immorality and people doing horrible, evil, wicked things because they rejected the religious principles found in Christianity. Up next, I have a little speech that was given by John Adams, the second president of the United States of America, the one that this little atheist was referring to with his Treaty of Tripoli nonsense. When you read this little excerpt where John Adams spoke, which is found on pages 265 and 266 of the book Life of General William Hull, you read John Adams saying the following: "To the officers of the 1st Brigade of the 3rd Division of the Militia of Massachusetts, gentlemen, I have received from Major General Hull and Brigadier General Walker your unanimous address from Lexington, animated with a martial spirit and expressed with a military dignity becoming your character and the memorable planes on which it was adopted. An address so animated, and from the officers commanding 2,800 men, composed of such substantial citizens as are able and willing, at their own expense, completely to arm and clothe themselves in handsome uniform, does honor to that division of the militia which has done so much honor to their country. While our country remains untainted with the principles and manners which are now producing desolation in so many parts of the world, while she continues sincere and incapable of insidious and impious policy, we shall have the strongest reason to rejoice in the local destination assigned us by Providence. But should the people of America once become capable of that deep simulation towards one another and towards foreign nations which assumes the language of justice and moderation, while it is practicing iniquity and extravagance, and displays in the most captivating manner the charming pictures of candor, frankness, and sincerity, while it is rioting in rapine and insolence, this country will become the most miserable habitation in the world, because we have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Avarice, ambition, revenge, and licentiousness would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. Oaths in this country are as yet universally considered as sacred obligations. That which you have taken and so solemnly repeated on that venerable ground is an ample pledge of your sincerity and devotion to your country and its government. Signed, John Adams, Quincy, 11th October, 1798. So according to John Adams, the U.S. Constitution was made to govern only moral and religious people, primarily Christians, since that was who was in the country at the time for the most part. And he made it very clear that if you have people who reject God, they reject Christianity, they reject religion and the morality that comes with religion, well, then this country would become the most miserable habitation in the world, because the U.S. Constitution was not designed to govern people who reject morality and religion. It was designed to govern religious people, primarily Christians. Up next, we have Thomas Jefferson, our third president, and we go to, I think this is chapter 19 of his work, Notes on the State of Virginia. And when you scroll down into this part of his book, you see Thomas Jefferson say the following: "And can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are the gift of God, that they are not to be violated but with his wrath? Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever." So, according to Thomas Jefferson, if people reject religion, and they reject the morality that comes with religion, and they reject the idea that the civil liberties we enjoy today are a gift from God, then what he said is that you remove any firm foundation, any firm basis to believe that these liberties of ours are secure or are even real, and that we'll be under God's judgment in the future if we go down this road. On the screen, you are seeing Noah Webster's work, Advice to the Young, and when you go to point number 49, you see that Noah Webster wrote the following: "When you become entitled to exercise the right of voting for public officers, let it be impressed on your mind that God commands you to choose for rulers just men who will rule in the fear of God. The preservation of a republican government depends on the faithful discharge of this duty. If the citizens neglect their duty and place unprincipled men in office, the government will soon be corrupted. Laws will be made not for the public good so much as for selfish or local purposes. Corrupt or incompetent men will be appointed to execute laws. The public revenues will be squandered on unworthy men, and the rights of the citizens will be violated or disregarded. If a republican government fails to secure public prosperity and happiness, it must be because the citizens neglect the divine commands and elect bad men to make and administer the laws. Intriguing men can never be safely trusted. So according to Noah Webster, when U.S. citizens vote for people to be their politicians, they must vote in rulers who fear God and who obey his commands to the best of their abilities. Because if you don't, you will see all of these horrible things happen. Things which, by the way, have been going on in this country during my entire lifespan. And this description that Noah Webster gave about what our country would look like if you reject God and religion and you put unprincipled, unreligious people or irreligious people or secular people in places of power in politics, well, what he said would happen, well, we're there, baby. We are absolutely there. I couldn't think of a better description of the climate of the United States of America politically than what Noah Webster wrote here. Now remember, I told Marco that in the late 1700s, the original constitutions of some U.S. states made it a thing where you had to be a Christian in order to hold public office. Now, some of you watching this video may be thinking to yourself, no way, that really happened? I thought the founding fathers and the people who made our country back in the 1700s wanted to be free from religion. Why on earth would they make that a requirement to hold public office in any state? Well, so you don't take my word for it, let's go to the Yale Law School website again, where we have the original Constitution of Vermont, which was published on July 8th, 1777, just barely 1 year after the Declaration of Independence. It is in Chapter 1, Section 3 of the original Constitution of Vermont that you read the following: that all men have a natural and unalienable right to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own consciences and understanding, regulated by the Word of God, and that no man ought or of right can be compelled to attend any religious worship, or erect or support any place of worship, or maintain any minister contrary to the dictates of his conscience, nor can any man who professes the Protestant religion be justly deprived or abridged of any civil right as a citizen on account of his religious sentiment or peculiar mode of religious worship, and that no authority can or ought to be vested in or assumed by any power whatsoever that shall in any case interfere with or in any manner control the rights of conscience in the free exercise of religious worship. Nevertheless, every sect or denomination of people ought to observe the Sabbath or the Lord's Day and keep up and support some sort of religious worship which to them shall seem most agreeable to the revealed will of God. Okay, you're thinking to yourself, that just guarantees that everyone has the right to worship God in any manner that they see fit. But that doesn't prove that politicians had to profess Christian faith in order to hold office. When you turn to Section 9 of Chapter 2 of the original Vermont Constitution from 1777, you read the following: a quorum of the House of Representatives shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of members elected, and having met and chosen their speaker, shall each of them, before they proceed to business, take and subscribe, as well as the oath of fidelity and allegiance herein after directed, as the following oath or affirmation: I, so-and-so, do solemnly swear by the ever-living God, or I do solemnly affirm in the presence of Almighty God, that as a member of this assembly I will not propose or assent to any bill, vote, or resolution which shall appear to me injurious to the people, nor do or consent to any act or thing whatever that shall have a tendency to lessen or abridge their rights and privileges as declared in the Constitution of this state, but will in all things conduct myself as a faithful, honest representative and guardian of the people according to the best of my judgment and abilities. And each member, before he takes his seat, shall make and subscribe the following declaration. I, so-and-so, do believe in one God, the creator and governor of the diverse, the rewarder of the good and punisher of the wicked, and I do acknowledge the scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration, and own and profess the Protestant religion. And no further or other religious test shall ever hereafter be required of any civil officer or magistrate in this state. So as we can see in Section 9 of Chapter 2 of the original Constitution of Vermont, you literally had to profess faith in God and acknowledge the Old and New Testaments of the Bible as being divinely inspired in order to hold public office. In other words, you had to be a Christian to hold public office in the state of Vermont 1 year after the Declaration of Independence was signed. But when you read Section 41 of Chapter 2 in the original Vermont Constitution, you read the following. Laws for the encouragement of virtue and prevention of vice and immorality shall be made and constantly kept in force, and provision shall be made for their due execution, and all religious societies or bodies of men that have or may be hereafter united and incorporated for the advancement of religion and learning, or for other pious and charitable purposes, shall be encouraged and protected in the enjoyment of the privileges, immunities, and estates which they in justice ought to enjoy under such regulations as the General Assembly of this state shall direct. So according to the original Vermont Constitution, not only did you have to be a Christian in order to hold public office in the state back in 1777, but Christian principles were supposed to be part of education in the state as well. So this whole idea that old Marco has over here, that Christianity has nothing to do with the foundations of our country, this shows that he is not very well read. Literally, our first three presidents and other founding fathers said that if you reject Christianity and the Bible and you free yourself from religion, then the whole American Constitution and the country, the United States of America as we know it, falls apart, because the government system that was formed in 1776 was meant to govern religious people, primarily Christians, and it was never meant to govern secular atheists who reject religion and the morality that comes with it. Now, Marco brought up the Treaty of Tripoli, so we have the treaty right here on the screen on this website, which I'll have a link to in the description box below. There's going to be a lot of links in the description box of this video. But when you go to Article 11 of the Treaty of Tripoli, you read the following. As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Mussulmen, and as the said states never have entered into any war or active hostility against any Mahometan nation, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries. So yes, that part is accurate, but what does that mean? Because John Adams read this article on the floor of the Senate, and yet we saw earlier in this video John Adams say that if people reject religion and the morality that goes with that religion, then the whole U.S. Constitution, the U.S. system falls apart because it was never meant to govern such people. In light of what John Adams said before, and in light of what the Treaty of Tripoli says in Article 11, we have to ask ourselves, well, what's the difference? If the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, then how can it also be true, according to John Adams, that the United States and the U.S. Constitution will fall apart if Christianity and religion in general is rejected by the people? Well, Mr. Noah Webster came to our rescue once again. On page 52 of his book, Mr. Webster's Speech in Defense of the Christian Ministry and in Favor of the Religious Instruction of the Young, on page 52 we see Noah Webster write the following. But how or when it may be established, there is nothing that we look for with more certainty than this general principle that Christianity is part of the law of the land. This was the case among the Puritans of England, the Episcopalians of the southern states, the Pennsylvania Quakers, the Baptists, the mass of the followers of Whitefield and Wesley, and the Presbyterians. All brought and all adopted this great truth, and all have sustained it. And where there is any religious sentiment amongst men at all, this sentiment incorporates itself with the law. Everything declares it. The massive cathedral of the Catholic, the Episcopalian Church with its lofty spire pointing heavenward, the plain temple of the Quaker, the log church of the hardy pioneer of the wilderness, the mesantos and memorials around and all about us, the graveyards, their tombstones and epitaphs, their silent vaults, their moldering contents, all attest it. The dead prove it as well as the living. The generation that has gone before speak to it and pronounce it from the tomb. We feel it. All proclaim that Christianity, general, tolerant Christianity, Christianity independent of sects and parties, that Christianity to which the sword and the bundle of sticks are known, general, tolerant Christianity, is the law of the land. So according to Noah Webster, Christianity, the principles of Christianity, are the law of the land. And he goes to great detail to explain how this applies to different Christian sects that were going on around the time. But when you turn back to his work, Advice to the Young, and you go to point 54, this is what Noah Webster also wrote. As the means of temporal happiness, then, the Christian religion ought to be received and maintained with firm and cordial support. It is the real source of all genuine republican principles. It teaches the equality of men as to rights and duties, and while it forbids all oppression, it commands due subordination to law and rulers. It requires the young to yield obedience to their parents, and enjoins upon men the duty of selecting their rulers from their fellow citizens of mature age, sound wisdom, and real religion, men who fear God and hate covetousness. The ecclesiastical establishments of Europe, which serve to support tyrannical governments, are not the Christian religion, but abuses and corruptions of it. The religion of Christ and his apostles, in its primitive simplicity and purity, unencumbered with the trappings of power and the pomp of ceremonies, is the surest basis of a republican government. So according to Noah Webster, the European church, the Church of England that the founding fathers fled from to start up the United States of America over here in the North American continent, that church was a corruption of the Christian religion, and it committed abuses in the name of the Christian religion, but it wasn't actually the Christian religion. It was a corruption and abuse of the Christian religion so that tyrannical governments in Europe could abuse people. So yes, the United States of America was not founded as that. It was not founded as a government that used religion to abuse people, and it didn't corrupt the religion. The idea was that people who were Christians or who were governed by Christian principles, they would live freely in the United States of America, and they would elect people like themselves to be the politicians who ruled over them in their states, and basically it would be a nice, harmonious country where Christian principles were at work. So when people like Marco bring up the Treaty of Tripoli as proof that the United States of America was not founded as a Christian nation, people like Marco are obviously ignorant of history. The founding fathers tell you, because they came from Europe and they came to North America and they established this country. The European version of Christianity, where state and church were fused together into one entity, that was a corruption of the Christian religion according to the founding fathers. The United States of America was supposed to be a country where Christians and religious people who honored Christian principles, they would live together and they would elect people like themselves to be their senators and their congressmen and ultimately president of the United States of America. And they would just continue to live free lives where they could pursue happiness in whatever form that was. The bottom line, Marco, is that the United States of America was indeed founded by Christians and Christian principles. The founding fathers all testify to that, and they made it crystal clear, especially our first three presidents, that if the people of America reject religion and the morality that goes with it, that this country would go down the tubes. In fact, Noah Webster accurately predicted what this country would look like if we went down that road, and he basically painted a picture that sounds like it was written last night. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Now you know that atheists like Marco here are out to lunch and historically ignorant when they claim that Christianity had nothing to do with the foundation of the United States of America. That is a complete and utter lie, and all one has to do is go read the words of the founding fathers of the United States of America in order to figure out that America was indeed founded on Christian principles, and it is in that sense a Christian nation, and the founding fathers understood how bad things would get in this country once you started rejecting the Bible and God and religion in general.